We are a type of species that want to be in control. Somehow, we want to control something. That gives us meaning, as if. Partners want to control each other, at least one of them does. Organizations want to control. Governments want to control. Banks want to control. Those who control the governments and the banks want to control. Control. But this is not just in the mundane world, in the financial world, in the political world, in the marital world, family, etc. But it is very present in the so-called religious or spiritual arena, where you have students, where you have practitioners, where you have teachers, trying to control. Perhaps not someone outside of themselves, but nevertheless there is an attitude of control with many, many people. Usually, in their case, it takes the shape of I want to control the process of meditation. I want to control what happens next. But there's another group of individuals that I have come across quite a bit who want to control by the use of the data that they have collected and continue to collect. This could be in the shape of reading suttas and listening to different Dhamma discourses, Dhamma talks by different contemporary or teachers or those before, reading and then taking notes and then learning new terminologies. So they can try and do their best in, again, exercising some level of control. Which, by the way, in all of these cases, it keeps the person in ignorance, in delusion, which equates with suffering, dukkha. So I've seen quite a number of individuals who think that they have studied the Dhamma, Lord Buddha's teachings, and have come up with their own conclusions because of some teachers, some Bhantes, some books they read, or how much time they have spent or do spend in analyzing what they have been exploring or researching. Again, all of those words equal control. Well, guess what? The Dhamma lies outside of that sphere of control. The Dhamma. True love lies outside that sphere of control. Intuition, the language of the heart, lies outside the realm of analysis, adding information, adding data, and then showing off and trying to convince yourself by debating, for example. I've seen this a lot. Showing. It's funny because sometimes during Dhamma talks, at the end, of sutta discussions, I usually ask if there are any questions and comments. I've encountered incidents and situations where people raise their hand and start to speak. So I'm looking for that moment where I can understand that there's a question. Unfortunately, in some of these cases, the person is trying to show off what they have studied, the junk that they have put inside their heads, which has nothing to do with life. And Dhamma is life. There needs to be a level of surrender. And these are the individuals who will never get it, so long as they keep treading on the same path of getting nothing except resentment, contentious, becoming more and more contentious, argumentative. So I'm always looking for that question mark at the end. Sometimes I have to, after I listen, I say, okay, where's the question? Is there a question? And then they would ask, like, your opinion, for example, on that conclusion that they have reached. And sometimes I just have to, well, give it to them very short and sweet and say, that is not what Lord Buddha taught. And there's usually a stunned look on their face. And they would like to get like a reference or from what is my source, and I would just point out, like, in this sutta or that sutta, or Lord Buddha never taught this conclusion. It's something that you have picked up from this guru or that teaching or that Bhante or that Ajahn. This has nothing to do with the Dhamma. Dhamma is experiencing by the person. But the experience requires you to get out of your way. Get out of your way. All this intellectual nonsense. Putting in all this stuff in your head, thinking that it's actually conducive, it's going to get you closer to Nibbana or to understanding. No, it won't. And by the way, you have nothing to show for all this gathering of garbage in your head. At least a person who's obese, by eating and eating and eating all those calories, they have something that they can show. What do you have? By all this mental stuff, terminologies, interpretations. No, this is what it says in this book. No, this is what it says in that book. How much has any of these, any minuscule portion of what you have learned or studied, researched, how much have they gotten you closer to experiencing peace and tranquility? How close are you now to tasting the Dhamma? Are you? So there's this attempt, constant, ongoing effort on the part of the person to control. And that's something that we cannot avoid. As species, we like to control. That's what I was trying to say in the beginning. We want to control. That's what gives us this false sense of, everything's fine, everything's fine, everything's fine. What is that? You can let your guard down. Control. Establish dominance. You see it everywhere. You see it in the CCTVs. everybody being watched, looked, followed, Big Brother, you know. They used to joke about this in the 80s, and now it's reality everywhere. You cannot go anywhere without someone knowing about it. So you're always under surveillance. That's another form of control. There's suffering there, though. It's always ready to explode. It's always ready. The balloon is ready to pop all the time. So you do what? You run after having even more control. You see this in toxic relationships between couples, for example. Jealousy issues. One is always trying to please the other. One is always trying to establish dominance in different ways. Control, establishing power. All of these methods do one thing for sure. They always keep us on edge. They always keep the mind and the heart agitated. There cannot be tranquility. In other words, there cannot be happiness for the person. So it's not just in the material world that we see this effort at wanting to control, but it's also, a lot of it is found in practitioners' minds, in their hearts. That's why you cannot taste the Dhamma fast enough, or ever. My dad used to say, there's an expression that he would use before he died in his life. You know, I remember he would say something in English, if I translate, it's like, son, you're carrying the ladder sideways while you're going through a doorway. How in the world are you going to come out of that doorway? You have to change the position of the way you're handling the ladder. Ladder here is a synonym for something that is useful. This could be information. This could be the time that someone is spending with you or allowing you to spend with them. Learn to trust a little. But if you see someone, let's say in a relationship, taking advantage of that trust, please be smart about it and get out. Use the ladder to get out. So use the information that you're exploring, you're researching, you're reading in the suttas and the discourses you're listening to, etc. Use that in the proper way, not by holding the ladder sideways. That is the sure way to remain a putujjana, a stupid person. Someone who is uncultured as far as the Dhamma is concerned, undeveloped, untrained. Putujjana. So there's a lot of putujjanas in the world. It's the majority. So don't be part of that. Use the Dhamma wisely. Use the ladder wisely. And get out of samsara. That's why it's there. That's why the Dhamma was taught in the first place. Not for you to box things and keep piling them up in your invisible, limitless warehouse of nonsense. So It's another way of looking at power and wanting to have control. You cannot control the Dhamma. And no, getting a few PhDs or what is an equivalent of that is going to secure you that level of control. No, that won't do either. Only practice, but the correct practice, Lord Buddha says, will get you to taste the Dhamma.